Good evening, everyone, and we're not giving anything out for free, so I don't know why there's so many people here. Would everybody please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Debbie, could you please take roll?
Committeeman Maringolo?
Here.
Committeeman Ray?
Present.
Committeeman Schuler?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Here.
Mayor Paserchia?
Present. So, consent agenda 18-054 through 18-063. Are there any resolutions that somebody would like to discuss, Paul?
I'd like to amend
Okay.
18-062 and appoint Lieutenant Naga as the officer in charge, Chief Law Enforcement Officer, effective February 1st, 2018.
Second.
Well, we would do that
Yeah,
as part of the whole.
We'll just insert it prior to consideration of the consent agenda.
Any other resolutions to pull or to discuss? So can I have a motion to pass 18-054 through 18-63 with the amendment as explained by Committeeman Ray?
So moved. Second.
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchia?
Yes. At this point, if I could, ask Chief Mazzeo to come up to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for coming. I think everybody knows how much I absolutely love speaking in public, and I'm pretty sure this is the last time I'm going to have a microphone in front of my mouth, except maybe karaoke. But by being here, we have a special occasion. We have 3 fine officers that are going to be promoted tonight. But prior to doing that, I just want to make an announcement that I'm going to be retiring as of February 1st. And the reason why I'm here now telling you prior to the promotions is because if I was to do it after, I would be standing here talking to nobody because the room absolutely clears out. But real quick, I'm just going to, thank everyone, especially the taxpayers who provided me with a great living, who allowed me to raise a nice family, live in a nice neighborhood, and have a nice life. They were a pleasure to work for, and I really believe, and I've always said this, is that as a police officer, you're working for the taxpayer, and a business model is, you try to serve that person who is the taxpayer in the best way that you possibly can. I'd also like to thank the department and the department members. We had a lot of accomplishments over the years that, I was able to be chief. I would never be able to accomplish the things in which we did accomplish without the members of the agency. I could honestly say it was a complete team effort, and for that, I thank them. I'd like to thank my family and my parents and all my friends, and especially the committee. I'd like to thank, when I go to a lot of these meetings and we have conversations with my peers, and we talk about administrators and committee members, and it always seems like it's a very adversarial relationship, and that could cause a lot of anxiety and stress for a chief, especially when you're trying to manage your agency and your committee as being your boss is really not on the same page. But I could truly say that each and every one of these committee members, and I think there's only one that's not here when I was promoted, and that's Guy Rochtel, have had unyielding support for the police department. And I truly believe that your decisions, sometimes we didn't always agree, and that's always going to happen. But I really believe that every one of your decisions that you made were based on the best for Long Hill Township, and I really want to thank you for that. And with that, I'm not going to say any more. We're going to go right along to the promotions. And I just want to say for everyone, thank you very much. It was a pleasure and an honor serving you here in Long Hill Township. And I'm going to miss each and every one of you. Thank you.
Chief, before you move along, I just wanted to say a few words, and I promise there'll be a few. And, you know, a lot of people, maybe they don't know, and I received a little bio thanks to Brendan Ray. Chief Mazzeo has a bachelor's degree in law and justice from the College of New Jersey and a master's degree, human resources and development from Seton Hall. Go Pirates. Chief Mazzeo was a New Jersey Transit police officer early in his career before we were fortunate to have you join Long Hill in '95. Chief Mazzeo rose quickly through the ranks, sergeant, lieutenant, and ultimately became chief in 2013, as the chief mentioned. I was mayor at the time, and I can say on a more personal note, I can't thank you enough for what you did for this town when I was mayor and for when everyone else up here, for the committee, for Guy Rashto. Anytime I had a call, 24/7, if I needed to reach out to you, you always answered, always called back. Anytime there were issues in town, you were on top of them. You run a top-notch police department. It is one of the most respected in the state of New Jersey. Anytime I go to any event with other representatives from other towns, they speak incredibly highly of Long Hill Township. And for that, I thank you.
Chief, yes, for the podium. Thank you.
Very much.
Right.
Going to do 3 at a time? Or
No,
you're
we're
gonna
going to do one at a time,
You want to start with sergeants or lieutenants?
whichever you would prefer, sir.
Like to call up Lieutenant Chimbrello.
Okay, raise your right hand and your left hand on the Bible and repeat after me. I, Alexis Chambrello, do solemnly swear
I, Alexis Chambrello, do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Lieutenant of the Long Hill Township Police Department
of Lieutenant of the Long Hill Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Before I call up Sergeant Mrs. Sagowski, I just want to wish Lieutenant Naga the best of luck after the announcement. I'm sure he's going to lead the department in the best way that he can and move forward. And I'm sure that he's going to keep moving in on a positive direction and great things. Congratulations, Lieutenant Naga. Sergeant Sagowski.
I, Melissa Slugowski, do solemnly swear
I, Melissa Sagowski, do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Sergeant of the Long Hill Township Police Department
of Sergeant of the Long Hill Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Next is Sergeant Delino.
Congratulations.
I just dropped it, maybe it will hit off. Raise your right hand, rest your left hand on the Bible, and repeat after me. I, Christopher Gelino, do solemnly swear
I, Christopher Gelino, do solemnly swear
I will support the Constitution of the United States
I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of Sergeant of Long Hill Township Police Department
of Sergeant of the Long Hill Township Police Department
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my abilities, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Okay. So the one thing we do here in Long Hill Townships is swearing in, and we do them pretty quick. So we got 3 of those done in 20 minutes. So I'd like to invite everybody to come over to the Chimney Rock for some beverages and something to drink and have a good time. Thank you very much.
Chief, thank you.
You too.
Thanks, Chief.
Congratulations.
Well done.
What'd you say?
How are you? I'm great. How are you? Good. It's good to see you.
I'll be nice.
Yeah, well, going to talk. I know. I hear you.
like, listen, you're not coming in the rest of this week at least, and then we'll talk over the weekend, see how she is. All right, bye-bye, nice seeing you. How do you know if this is on or off?
I think I put it back on.
The red light means it's on?
Yeah.
Page 6.
All right. I'll give him a chance to clear the room. Yes, I saw it. All right. Now that the unruly crowd has left.
Congratulations.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to liaison reports. Bruce?
The only thing I have to update everybody on is the redevelopment effort. We've got a bunch of information back from Elite Properties they've been doing a lot of surveying and engineering research on the project, and essentially the issue is that the Thermoplastics site on both the north side and the south side of Valley Road is essentially too low to put residential housing in. And the project, from an economic standpoint, depends on residential housing. So the flood elevation is about 215 feet, 215.7, and the DEP, to grant the hardship waiver, needs to be 1 foot above that. And some of the roadways around there where people would need to take in the event of a flooding event are significantly lower than that. So it doesn't make sense to try to redevelop that site for residential housing. So retail, office, industrial, those types of uses are fine. They don't require a hardship because there's no requirement that people need access during high flood events. But the economics of the project don't make sense with those type of uses. So part of the conversation that we've had is to look for, and to complicate the problem, is we've identified that redevelopment project as an area for our affordable housing obligation. So we've started to talk about some other areas around the township where a housing project might make sense, and then subsequently see how we might be able to work it into the project, whereby we would be able to redevelop the sites in Sterling for a non-residential use, and these other sites for the residential use, and transfer our affordable housing obligation to those sites. So we've got a couple of sites that we're taking a look at. We don't really have anything concrete at this point. So there's more work to be done here in terms of research and investigation before we can make any recommendation on how to proceed here.
Thank you, Bruce. Can I ask Jack, how does that affect our agreement?
At this point, it has no direct impact. However, as we move along, I would suggest that I go back to Fair Share Housing, explain the situation to them, and they've been pretty flexible about this kind of thing. And then we could go to the court at the compliance hearing and ask to substitute the new sites as part of the redevelopment.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, what it boils down to is we will likely not get the hardship waiver to put residential housing into that area. We could not redevelop it. We could try to acquire it for open space, clean it up ourselves, make it green acres or something like that. But if we wanted to keep the rateable in our commercial area, then we've got to figure out another way to make the project work and transfer our affordable housing obligation somewhere else. So that's what we're working on. Brendan, any other?
No, I think you pretty much covered everything, Bruce.
Okay.
Yep.
That's my report.
Thank you, Bruce. Cornell?
Nothing to report.
Matt?
Yes, from the land of DPW. First, there was an issue about more than a week ago, that the people were complaining they couldn't get a hold of the DPW, and the phone wasn't working. However, if everybody remembers, we had that power outage where basically the eastern half of town went out, and it affected the DPW, when it came back on, the phones reset. So actually, last Tuesday, Verizon came, and everything's fixed. So the phone now rings. And then besides the caller hearing it ring, it actually rings the DPW. The voicemail's set up. And for those of you who say they don't answer the phone, I physically have been there when people at the DPW have answered the phone that came in. So the phone is answered there. But if you don't, just leave a message. Second, obviously, if you need to report a pothole or something like that, you can go right on the town website, and you can put it there, and an email gets sent right to the DPW. I've personally used it, and things have gotten fixed, and I don't get any special treatment more than anybody else. So if there's a pothole or something simple like that, you can just email or do the report of pothole. Next, Christmas trees. You have about a week left for the Christmas trees. Just leave them out any day on the curb. They'll pick them up. After January 31st, there's no more pickup anymore, so you're going to have to dispose of them yourself or bring them to DPW. Skating, right now, I remember 2 weeks ago, we had a very positive report about the ice, not that it's negative, and I saw people out there using it, which was great. However, due to the warm weather, it's not safe to skate right now. So for the time being, check the flag, but as of right now, there's no skating at Sterling Lake. And finally, please, if you have these calendars, everybody gets them in town, and actually in the last 2 weeks, I've seen Berkeley Heights, New Providence, another town. Ours is about 10 times more informative than all the other towns around it. The back has got all the numbers if you need to contact somebody. Emails, phone numbers, everything. So you can go directly to the people you need to contact. And just keep in mind, there's the recycling schedule in here. And there's also an insert we put out this year that because the recycling days changed. So obviously you can call DPW, but you're going to get the same answer you would if you just open the calendar and look at it. So you have everybody's zone, where you're zoned for, when the recycling comes, when garbage comes, things like that. It's all in the insert. And just please refer to your calendar, because a lot of the questions that people have been asking are literally at their fingertips or hanging on their wall. So thank you.
That's it. I have something for HPAC, but I think it's probably better in new business. So I'll bring it up.
Okay. And to follow up on Matt, I'm pretty sure on the town website, although I must admit I was a little confused at first myself, there's a link on the top of the calendar when you go into the garbage and recycling section, and I think the recycling days are there as well.
Probably.
That's right, yeah. It took me a while to find it, but then again, I'm not the brightest bulb. Okay, so what we have is ordinance number 408-18, first reading, introduction, an ordinance establishing the Township wastewater treatment system as a municipal public utility effective January 1st, 2018. Now, I'd like to have a discussion on this. If anybody feels that they'd like to just have a discussion and then move it at a subsequent meeting, please let me know. But I think we've discussed this in the past, and I'm pretty comfortable that we can move forward tonight. But, and again, this is on first reading, introduction.
And the public should know this will not affect the users in any way. It's purely an internal administrative matter, budgetary matter.
Well, in effect, it's just, I think, formalizing what has been in effect since 2011, give or take.
Well, not exactly, no. My understanding is since 2011, the budgeting for the sewer has been part of the main operating budget.
That's correct.
What this does is this actually pulls it out of the main operating budget and makes it its own separate budgeting process.
That's exactly right.
So the operating expenses, any capital, anything like that now will be outside of the municipal budget. Even though it's still within the same budget process, when we go through it into March, we have to, do the same thing we would do normally. It's separate from the municipal budget now.
And so, Bruce, as a result, it's not subject to it doesn't count towards the 2% cap, is that right? by
After the
doing
first
this?
year.
After-
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how it affects us this year on the 2%, but in subsequent years it would.
That's great.
There's a cap adjustment. There's a cap adjustment that we're allowed to make.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
not the total, it doesn't totally come out, but there's an adjustment that accounts
Okay.
for it.
So,
And after that, it'll be.
so for example, typically in our budget, we've had $1.4 million allocated for sewer. That $1.4 million, is covered by the revenues that are generated through the billing of the sewer in the summer. Okay, so basically, it's a break-even proposition. The billing revenues match the expenses, break even, right? You don't really notice it in the budget, and the budget basically backstops the shortfall in the beginning of the year, and then when the revenues come in, they just replenish the budget operating cash that we have. Right? Well, now it's all going to be separate. Right? So the municipal budget won't be backstopping it, right? And we do have to budget the $1.4 million outside of the normal process, but also any additional things that are required would be a part of this process as well. And we actually have a little bit of a timing issue that we're going to need to figure out, because we know the $1.4 million for the operating expenses. What we don't know is what we're going to spend when, okay, to fix the system. And our bills go out in
June.
They go out in April, they're due
April,
in June.
right?
But they're not due until.
They're due in June or July.
No,
Yeah.
they're either due late
They
July
usually go out in
or
June.
August.
That's right.
So,
They go out in June, they're due
it
at
doesn't,
the end of
it
July.
really doesn't matter.
They're prepared
The
in
point is that
April.
we're going to be working on the budget in March, okay? Or we're starting on it now. We're going to finish it in March, okay? The bills are going to go out in the summer, right? But we have to anticipate what the expenses are going to be through the end of the year and into next year prior to the billing in 2019, right? So you're talking about, 15, 16 months here that we have to project, right? So there's a bit of a timing issue that we have to figure out here, because going through it for the first time, we need to include all that in the budget. So that's my understanding of this, and, I support us doing this, and so that the accounting is all separate.
And Mayor, I mean, I was under the impression we had discussed this at a previous meeting, and I'm absolutely fine with it as well.
Matt?
So in principle, I'm fine with this. My concern is whether or not we understand all the financial implications of this decision, and we don't have a CFO right now to answer those questions.
But we do. We do. I've already discussed this with Randy, who is acting as our CFO, and he's fine with it. He reviewed the ordinance, our auditor reviewed the ordinance. Randy's prepared to make sure that everything gets moved. Basically, it's pulling everything out of the budget, pulling the appropriations and the payments out of the budget and putting them into the utility. So it's essentially just moving the money. So he's fine with it. What you're going to bill going forward is a separate discussion that you won't be able to have tonight until you get those figures from
Are
Pat.
we able to bill out all the partial personnel's charges that we might
Yeah.
currently assign to that today
So we're,
and appropriate that
Yes.
between two separate budgets?
yeah, so we are working out percentage of my salary, percentage of Tom Sweeney's salary, even as far as the clerk and the CFO eventually. So you take a certain percentage and you allocate, you figure out how much of our time is spent on sewer, and then we take the corresponding percentage of our salary and allocate it to the sewer utility. So we're working on those now.
And what about pension costs and healthcare costs?
I think it's as a whole. You look at our whole compensation package, and then you take a percentage, whatever the percentage is, you take a percentage of that and move it over.
Okay, so we're able to get that granular with what
Yep.
an employee costs all in.
Yep.
Now, are we able to,
Oh, and just a second comment, after speaking with our auditor today, the state won't approve our regular budget if we don't have this.
I mean, our regular budget.
right? We submit our budget to the state for approval, for review
Yeah.
and approval.
Yeah.
They won't approve it if we don't have this. So,
As of when?
well,
They've been approving it for the past,
yes, but that's because our sewer is part of our municipal budget, right? If we take it out, right, without this ordinance,
Oh, we need
they won't
utility.
approve our budget.
right, if we take it out.
Right.
Correct, but that's what this ordinance does. This
Right.
ordinance takes it out.
Right.
Right,
Yes.
so if you don't do it, then.
Then it's
Then
in.
we, then we're
Right,
then we're
then
doing
it's-
everything,
Then it's still part of the municipal budget.
correct.
Right, my concern and my worry is, while I have always been principally supportive of making the system cover its costs, the fact that it was part of the municipal budget didn't necessarily mean that you had to be exact to that penny. So if you needed, if, for example, you had some surplus on the municipal side and you needed a little bit of money to cushion the sewer budget, you were able to do that. And we haven't done it, and we've principally tried staying away from that. But if we do this, is there a mechanism to transfer money out of the
Yeah.
municipal budget into
As a
the
loan,
utility?
you can loan, you can do interfund loans as long as it's paid back by the end of the year.
So you can't
You can,
annually do, okay, this year, we're gonna decide that $100,000 is gonna move from the municipal budget.
well, I know you can go the other way, so I assume you can go that way too. But that's a vote that you'd have to take for transfer. You know, I think that maybe, to allay your fears, maybe it would be a good idea to have Randy, who's acting as our CFO, to come to the public hearing. Or if you'd like to talk to him, you know, ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, he should probably, I think, be here for the hearing, and I'll probably reach out to him beforehand, just to understand. I mean, you know, like I said, I've always been the big proponent of if the sewer user should be paying for this. But this makes it a science with, there's no flexibility at that point after that in your decisions of what you do, and you're forced into that corner.
Well, it's not to the penny. It's not that if you put in $100, you have to take out $100.
It can hold a balance, I would assume, and I would assume.
It builds its own surplus.
So I would assume it's going to have to start holding its own surplus in order to cushion the run until we start collecting fees, because we're incurring expenses at the beginning of the year, but not collecting revenue until June,
Well,
July.
We're going to be loaning from our regular budget, just like we do now.
Okay. Okay.
Is there an interest on that loan, or is it just? Well, it's the obvious question.
Yeah, no. You're
Jersey City.
paying yourself out of one pocket into the other.
Well, well, typically, we don't, on first reading, open it to the public, but maybe since there are a lot of people here, but you can comment?
There's no public hearing.
What's that?
There's no public hearing until the next meeting.
That's right, it's not a scheduled public hearing. You know what, hold any questions or comments you have until open to the public part at the end, because this is not part of a public hearing. You are in fact correct, Nancy. So at this point, would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move ordinance 408-18 as stated in the agenda.
Second.
Debbie?
Miniman Maringolo,
Yes.
Miniman Ray,
Yes.
Miniman Schuler,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey.
Yes.
Mayor Paserchi.
Yes.
Right.
And Jack, if I could, would you mind just explaining briefly ordinance 409-18?
Yes, I'd like to stress that although this is amending the sewer fee section, it's not changing the rates. All it's doing is changing some of the language to reflect the fact that a sewer utility is being created. So there'll be no change in the rates until you're farther along in the budget process and you determine rates for this coming year. So this is really an administrative cleanup type of ordinance. As you can see in the first, in section 1, the ordinance is presently written states the purpose, and I think this goes back to 1967. The purpose of this article is to disestablish the sewer utility. So apparently it was a sewer utility back in the 60s. But with that language, I spoke to Ray and Randy, and we thought it ought to come out to make it clear that, it's not to disestablish the sewer utility that we're in the process of establishing.
So did I hear that correctly? In the 60s in Long Hill Township, there was a utility here?
Yep.
I did not know that.
But remember, utility is not an authority. An
Right.
authority has separate members and everything. So again, it was a budgetary tool.
Thank you, Jack.
Move ordinance 409-18 as stated in the agenda.
Second?
Committeeman Maringolo?
Yes.
Committeeman Ray?
Yes.
Committeeman Schuler?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dorsey?
Yes.
Mayor Paserchio?
Yes.
Ordinance is
So under discussion items, I had asked Debbie to put this on, and I had ad hoc boards, committees. A couple of residents had reached out to me and asked about scheduling for advisory committees, ad hoc committees, et cetera, and would those meetings be listed on the town website? So I think the primary one was the Master Plan Committee, and the Master Plan Committee gave a schedule last night. I know it's going to be listed. If it's not already there, it will be sometime this week, I think, or next week.
Yep.
But no meetings will take place until that schedule is put out. For clarification, ad hoc committees and committees are not required by state statute, but Long Hill, for some time now, has posted the meeting schedules anyway. Open government has always been a primary objective of this committee. So those committees are all listed. The ad hoc master plan committee will in fact be listed. Now, there are other committees that are, I don't want to call them lesser, but there are other committees that meet that I don't think people necessarily, the opioid commission, or task force, which we've now changed the name to the Way Out.
Yep.
We meet, but that is not listed. If anybody, we would love for members of the public to come to those meetings. So maybe we can. The problem with meetings like that, or the Traffic Advisory Committee meeting, they are, they don't have a predetermined schedule. They meet as needed at the direction of this committee. So I would strongly encourage anybody who has questions regarding anything to do with those questions. I see your hand, but please wait until the public session. By all means, this is your proper forum. Any questions regarding the master plan? The planning board is your proper forum. You always have access to it. And on the town website, on the upper right-hand side, and maybe we haven't done a good job, and Cornell, if you could bring this back to the Communication Advisory Committee, there's a button that says contact. You hit that, and you can send a general question, which is generally answered within 24 hours. You can also hit directory button, and you could send your questions directly to who you'd like to send them to. So, the proper forums really are the administrator, the township committee, the planning board, although all are welcome to go to any of those meetings as scheduled. So I don't know if hopefully I've been clear. I don't know if anybody on the committee has any clarifications they'd like to make, or... So that's the reason I put that there. All right, old business, new business, they generally kind of blend together, so why don't you just pile in on old or new?
If I can, on new, I've had a request from HPAC, and they're requesting permission to place 2 benches in Turtle Rock Park in the vicinity of the Cooper cenotaphs. And they believe that the benches will be donated, and perhaps installation could be through DPW, And they request permission to move forward with that, or the general comment.
Jack,
Yeah,
there's
I
no
think the
legal
committee-
reason why.
No legal reason. So if the committee just agrees to it, I think that's
So,
sufficient.
everybody fine with that?
Yes.
Yep.
My only concern is they don't start buying $80,000 benches.
No, yeah, no, these are going to be donated.
Okay.
I believe the township historian, Sam Cornish, believes that he will have these donated. And then it's a nice place then to sit and reflect and,
Please thank HPAC for arranging that.
yep, I will. Thanks.
Matt?
What?
And I, do we have any old, new? I know we're gonna get to you.
It's all right.
Bruce? Nothing. Nancy, I know that you have a few items.
I do. I just want to update you on the no-knock ordinance progress. We've had 27 applications now, which is like double what it was at the last meeting. The applications are available online, and they are, if you print them out and send them bring them to the police department, they are also available here at Town Hall and at the Senior Center, but they have to be brought to the police department to get on the list and get your decal. The Traffic Advisory Committee met today. There were 3 topics. One was a concern that the mayor brought to the committee about the intersection of Mountain Avenue, Myersville Road, and Long Hill Road. The request was to put a mirror there. We asked the county to look into it. They are still investigating it, but it's been determined that our police department and DPW will be meeting with the county in the next week or so to discuss the possibility of cutting back the trees on the hill, which is on I believe, the southern side of Long Hill Road and the south side of Mountain. And we're also going to talk to them about possibly improving signage. So that's ongoing. They discussed Railroad Avenue. I told them that this committee had decided, you want to look into a wetland study to see what kind of parking you could put in. I did get the quote today, and this is just for phase 1, and this is the whole area that you asked for. The quote is for $1,950. What you would get is something that would show the property boundaries, our property boundaries, as well as the other private owners, the existence of wetlands, and the transition area, which is the wetlands buffer, which is important, how many feet that has to be. So I don't know if you want to go ahead with that, if you want to talk about it at a future meeting, ordering the study. Like I said, this is just phase 1. Phase 2 is probably about $9,000 for all of it, but really all you need to know is where are there wetlands there, and if so, where are they, and how big is the buffer? So I think and Paul Farrar believes you're only going to need phase 1. So if
Yeah, I think it's important that we know that in relationship to our property boundary, to see if parking is something that can be put at the end of Railroad Avenue. So I'm in favor of allocating the money and doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I would be too, especially given the discussion that we had at the planning board last night.
I mean, Jack, you had mentioned this earlier. I mean, back in 13, I believe it was, the committee had designated all township-owned property to the Rossi. But sometimes, perhaps, I don't want to put words in your mouth, DEP makes exceptions if it's clear you made a mistake. And apparently, this property was listed on the Rossi as a baseball field. So unless
Yeah.
a baseball field is as narrow as this room,
It's a batting cage.
yeah, it's a batting cage.
I have had some success with Green Acres allowing things that were clearly included in error to be removed. If not, it's a very arduous process.
Thank you.
But it can be done.
Point of order, I see a man standing there, maybe it's Charles, I don't really know. He has to be advised. You can't just let him stand there like this, it's weird.
I said earlier, and I'll repeat it, members of the public can come up and speak during the public session. If Chuck would like to stay there, I have no objection to it.
Thank you.
So, anyway, let's carry on.
The only question I would have is, do we have an estimate of what it would cost us to get that piece of property off the Rossi? And can we pick the least expensive option?
It depends. If Green Acres is amenable to the idea, we can do it by an email, basically. Then they just do it administratively. But if we have to go through the process,
I mean, I'd hate to spend $1,900 on a survey to find out they're not even going to consider taking the property off the list. Is the only thing I would put forward.
Well, I mean, I think this is not, using your words, this is not an exact science.
No, understood. Yeah.
I think we have to defer. Jack said he has had some success in some particular cases.
So why don't we just ask him to take it off the list and then,
yeah,
And then do it,
I'll
yeah.
write to him tomorrow.
yeah.
Okay.
See where we're going,
And then-
report back next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, if
That makes
they're
sense.
willing to take it off the list, I have no problem spending the survey. But-
yeah, exactly.
Well, then we'd really like
Yeah.
to move forward as quickly as possible. Okay.
Okay. There was one more topic, which was Lackawanna Boulevard. As you might recall at the last meeting, I talked about the survey that we sent out, and the results of the survey were 50% in favor of putting turning restrictions in and 50% against. So the committee was not comfortable in recommending implementation of the restricted turning movements because there was no clear majority either way. But they did recommend asking the county to study changing the timing of the light at Morristown and Valley Road, and possibly putting a left arrow. So as you're traveling, I believe it's east towards Berkeley Heights on Valley Road, when you are at the light to make the left on the Morristown, there's a left lane, but there's no arrow. So they want to ask the county to put in the possibility of putting out a left arrow there. It's thought that if the light is faster and it's easier to make a left there, that more people will use that rather than use Lackawanna as the cut through. So we'd like to ask the county to do that.
That sounds like
It's a good idea. and if it works,
very good
great.
idea.
If
Yeah.
it doesn't, we can revisit it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Works for me.
Okay. I also just wanted to follow up on, a while ago, before I came, you had started an energy audit process. Just actually this week, I received a letter from the company asking for additional documentation, utility bills and things. So when we get them they can finalize the reports for each of our buildings, and they should be received in the next few weeks. Okay, and then two more things. The electric car charging station has also been discussed a lot here. We are ready to go, but we are still waiting for the contract from JCP&L and from their legal department. And Rob Walton, who is their government representative, said that we should be getting it any day now. So we're still waiting for that.
And there's an article in New Jersey League magazine, I don't know if anybody gets it, but you probably look at it online, and I'm proud to say that Long Hill is at the forefront of a major change that's taking place across the state, but we'll be one of the first municipalities in the state to have a charging station. But a lot of towns are now looking into it, so.
Right.
And then the last thing that I had is the Gillette School Crossing. Work started, but it was stalled because of the weather. So it will resume now, but progress is highly dependent on the weather. Foundations or whatever had to sit for a certain amount of time, and in the period while it had to sit, it snowed, and they were covered in snow, and now everything's melted, so work will resume, and it should get done in the next couple months.
Well, that's great.
That's all I have.
Actually, Mayor, just while I remember, as far as the old town hall is concerned, do we have any progress on that, or maybe that's something that we can talk about at the next meeting? Because it's just coming to my mind, so I'm
brief
sorry
update, Nancy.
to spring it on you.
If I can, just to update you on that. We've had issues, as you know, the heating system has had problems. And we've had issues with getting the contractor to come repair them. We've been lucky because we were concerned about pipes freezing with the extreme cold we had, but our DPW was able to get space heaters in, kept the pipes warm enough, so luckily nothing has frozen. In the meantime, we've been working with the contractor. The difficulty is that there is only one factory approved, warranty approved, factory approved for the Aon system. So we're kind of stuck with them, and I think they know that. So they've been delaying. We've been trying to get them since November to come in and look at it and fix one fuse. Apparently, I think it's a fuse, is a big part of the problem. So anyway, then they didn't have the parts. They ordered the parts, and they got the parts, and then all their technicians got the flu. So as of right now, they are scheduled to come on January 29th, I believe, is the next Monday. And hopefully fix the heat for once and for all. Once the heat is fixed, then we can move on to the possibility of renting out. But it's not really feasible right now when we ask somebody to be in a building that's not heated.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that update, Nancy. I'm glad there's progress there. Sounds like it's been a long road.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Some quick announcements. These are kind of important ones, so please bear with me. There's a 2018, so obviously this year, Child Health Conference, Vaccines for Children. And Dennis, I imagine this will be on TV. And are we able to put it on the website as well? All right, so I won't go too much into it, but the clinic is conducted in conjunction with the Bernards Township Health Department for children without health insurance, birth to 18 years old. So this is a very, very important conference for free appointments. It's a free clinic. And I won't read the whole thing, so it will be there. And hopefully the Echoes can put it in a newspaper as well. Thank you. Skating at Sterling Lake, Matt already did a great job explaining that. Obviously, please check the signs at the lake to make sure it's safe to skate. Obviously, it's not safe now. I imagine it's all back to being water. The rec department has discounted tickets available to Medieval Times, to Crayola, and some winter sports and skiing at Shawnee Mountain, Mountain Creek, Jack Frost Big Boulder, and Blue Mountain. Just reach out to the rec department. You can call or, of course, go on the website. The snowman contest, the critical part about that is snow. We don't have any right now, but there. And to view current submissions, I'm told we have very talented sculptors in town. Look at recently added classes, CPR training, AED training as well. There's a volleyball clinic, etc. This is all on the recreation page. And the Easter Bunny is coming March 4th, 10 a.m., Cantor Park, for the annual Easter egg hunt. CERT is looking for members, and much like our police departments, the Long Hill CERT department is, I can say, is probably the most respected in the state. They are often held up as the example for other towns. Ever since Ken Fulger started this some time back, I mean, we have been asked to go, we being the members of CERT, to go and explain to other towns how to set one up. Last I checked, I think they had 99 members. I don't know where they're up to. They keep trying to make me number 100. I don't know if anybody would like me helping them in any way, shape, or form when it comes to medical conditions and stuff. No emergency service experience is required. Some of the training sessions will be made available to you if you become a member of CERT: first aid, Homeland Security, terrorism, incident command, et cetera, et cetera. So, forms are available at the police headquarters department on 264 Mercer Street. Class size is limited, so please, if you'd like to get involved, by all means do. I promise you, it will be a rewarding experience. With that, I'm going to open it up to the public Please be respectful of the other members of the public who were here, and to the members of the public who are watching at home. Comments and remarks, please limit them to 3 minutes. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Arenowitz, who has patiently been standing there.
Thank you very much, Mayor Charles Arenowitz, Millington. I'd like to comment on ordinance 408-18. Establishing our municipal public utility in the year of 2018. We've had a sewer plant here since the 1920s. Mayor, you've been mayor for what, 3 terms?
Well, 3 years. I don't know if term
Well,
sounds a little
whatever it is.
pretentious, but
Could some of you or one of you explain to me why now in 2018 we're going to establish a municipal public utility when we've had it since the 1920s?
well, I don't know if anybody would like to take a stab?
I mean, I'm in favor of it simply to separate the accounting, that's all.
The question is, why didn't we do it, 70, 80 years ago?
I don't know, I'm only 52.
Well, you've been, how long? You got reelected, you've been here 4 years. Why didn't you establish it when you joined 4 years ago?
Actually, we did talk about it last year through the budget process, but.
I want to talk 4 years ago. That's 1 year.
Okay. But we're doing it now.
Why?
Well,
I just said, so we can separate the accounting.
All right, here's the question. Some of you got educated in November and December about the monies that are available to this town to help with our sewer. We can take out basically a loan or an equity loan. I'm very concerned, since you just got educated, will this impact on the monies that we can get?
No. Will not.
Are you sure of that?
Yes.
I can take it to the bank.
Correct. It'll still be the township, will still be the applicant for any grants.
I still don't understand why we didn't do it 70 years ago.
Well, I don't know why 70 years ago. I know that as far as probably 2008 through about 2010 or 11 was when the township committee at the time started to make the sewer users wholly accountable for sewer expenses. Up until 2008, the sewer system was effectively subsidized by the 12% that were not connected. So the township committee in 08, 09, around that time frame, discussed
07.
or 07, Dennis, thank you, started discussing, the fee-based system based upon usage. So prior to that, it would not have been in the best interest of the committee to put it into a utility based upon the financials that, the financial model that they were using.
Thank you. Next question. The redevelopment zone on Valley Road. We spent a lot of money on our consultants to develop this plan. Now we can't develop it on the one side for residential. 5 or 6 days ago, our new governor reappointed a new individual to the DEP to head that up. There's going to be more restrictions on development in the floodplain. Why did we spend all this money?
Well, I proposed it so that we would clean up the unsightliness that's there. That's why I proposed it.
But we can't do it now, right?
Well, we can't develop it for residential use. It still can be developed for industrial, retail, or office type use.
Well, why didn't we leave it industrial?
We can.
Great. We're going to do that maybe, right?
We don't have a defined plan at this point, so I can't say as to whether we are going to do that or not.
I question the expenditure. Next topic. The Master Plan Committee, I've been requesting when they're meeting, they said last night they're going to identify the dates.
It was part of the.
The website indicated that we were going to develop a master plan in 2016. Mayor, sent you that quote from the website. We're now in 2018. I was on the committee in 2013. We're going to develop a master plan. It's 5 years. Going down this path isn't going to change. You need to make changes to that committee and get the direction established. We're 5 years away from the 10-year requirement of developing a new master plan. Next topic.
Chuck, by the way, I do appreciate you outlining all these things, but again, there's a lot of members of the public, so I just want to.
Oh, good. Chief Mazzio's settlement agreement. In December, we had another settlement with the officer. Today's agreement goes for 6 months. Was that vacation, sick time, or a settlement?
Settlement meaning lawsuit settlement?
I don't know. I just what it says in the agenda.
I believe it was handled as administrative leave by Labor Council.
What does that mean?
That allowed it allowed the township to move on and for Chief Mazzeo to retire, using up his sick days, his vacation days, and all that. It was just all lumped together. But it was crafted by Labor Council, as I say.
So we're paying $75,000 for 6 months so he can use up his vacation and sick time. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
I think we need to take a look at that
75.
going down the road. Chief Mazzeo was our 4th chief to retire from this town. We've got 4 on active retirement. What a deal. Let me tell you, in my firm at Ernst & Young, we required individuals to use their vacation in the year it was awarded. Unfortunately, in the state of California, they said, no, we're going to protect all our employees. You can carry over 1 year of allotted vacation. I strongly suggest when you met in private session on the Department of Public Works agreement, don't allow vacation and sick time to accrue. We as taxpayers can't afford it, including the deal cut last month with the officer. This has got to stop. We as taxpayers cannot afford it. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak to you and move forward with some of my suggestions. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chuck.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year to all. If I could just follow up, Bruce, on the redevelopment. I've always known of Elite Properties as a residential developer primarily. Based upon what you told us tonight, are they still a viable developer for that zone?
Yeah, they have done retail stuff as well. So I believe they are.
Of the scale, if it isn't residential above and retail on the ground floor,
mixed use kind
of the
of concept.
same scale, they are qualified to do that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, you are correct, though. Most of their projects are residential or mixed use in nature. And the economics of this thing, are pretty much based on residential. So if we
Right.
can't find
Right.
a residential spot to move our affordable housing and designate that area, then we have to reevaluate the whole process.
I think initially it was 138 that they had proposed residential units
I believe that.
on both sides,
Yeah,
right?
roughly, that sounds right.
And what percentage of that 138 had to be low and moderate?
15%.
So whatever that number is, 27, whatever that number is?
Actually, our plan included 10.
Yeah,
10 in that?
That wasn't the plan.
Our settlement with Fair Share Housing included 10 affordable housing units at the redevelopment
that
site.
site.
Well, if it doesn't become residential, that means the 10 have to go somewhere else. I mean, it's that simple, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a comment on the land diversion, if I may, please.
Could you be specific, land diversion?
Land diversion for the park across the street. Land diversion.
And I know you and I know what
Right,
we're talking
right.
about, just so the
Right.
public knows.
Just a little bit of history. I'm a licensed landscape architect and a professional planner, and I participated in the Vision Committee either as a volunteer or a member since its inception. When the opportunity came to swap the land behind Walgreens owned by Parthenon Realty for the land fronting on Valley Road owned by the township as part of the park, I was concerned about the activities on the Parthenon property directly adjacent to the western boundary line of the park. As late as a year and a half ago, I brought this issue up to the Vision Committee. I went to the site, I walked the site, I took photographs of the site where the illegal dumping was taking place. I took photographs, and at the time I gave them to Township Manager Neil Henry, who was a member of that committee at the time. We were going to discuss that. My concern at the time was that dumping was taking place on a property that we were going to acquire. My concern was that the dumping, although not only illegal, but it was taking place in the wetland buffer, which is immediately downslope of the northern portion of that property. My concern was that if we were to swap that, if the deal was to go through and the township wound up with that property, we would wind up with a pig in a poke because we would be responsible for any cleanup of the material that had been dumped. Lo and behold, last spring we had Mr. Farrar go out and plot the western boundary of the township property vis-a-vis the Parthenon property. And lo and behold, we find that the material dumped wasn't on that property, it was on Long Hill Township's property. And now DEP is demanding that that property be cleaned up. Now, I've heard a number of numbers floated around to clean that up, everything from $40,000 to $10,000. I would urge this committee not to pay one damn dime out of township funds to clean up that mess that was created by a business that Parthenon Realty allowed to develop on that parcel. There's no way that we should pay those funds. If the money has to be paid to DEP, tell Parthenon to get their checkbook out and pay whatever the difference is. The town has paid thousands and thousands of dollars to move this land swap along. It's my understanding that Parthenon has not contributed a dime to this effort. I understand the value of the access to Valley Road along Walgreen property. I understand how important that is to the development of the park. That doesn't mean this town should be held hostage to this individual when there's an opportunity to acquire that access by easement or condemnation. I'd also like to remind this committee that that business that is dumping this material may or may not be a viable use in that zone. And I'm going to find out whether it is or not. And I'd also like to remind you that Parthenon Realty cleared the property and moved earth directly across the street from the Luke Oil station without permission. So I want to reiterate, we should not pay one dime out of township funds, Green Acre funds, or any other funds for the cleanup of this site. It's not our responsibility.
Don, stay there 1 second. Don, first off, thank you for all the research you did. We're doing, and it sounds like a perfunctory answer, and it's not meant. We're doing our due diligence on this. Nothing has been decided. And I mean, I can't go into any more detail, but I appreciate everything you said, and I agree. You brought this to the attention of the Vision Committee 18 months ago?
A year and a half ago, easy.
Year and a half ago?
Right.
And this committee was made aware of your concerns, so we've been aware of it for 18 months as well.
Okay. Fast forward, whatever the resolution is, I think that the town and the Vision Committee needs some reassurance that after this is cleaned up as paid by whomever, okay, that this activity doesn't continue. Because I don't know how long this swap is going to take. You know, the last time Ms. Malul, she said it could be the second quarter of 18. I don't know, but it's been going on, and I don't see any point in doing this if it's going to continue. So somehow or other, Parthenon has to be made aware that, you know, all bets are off on this crap.
I can tell you, Don, right now, we're at an impasse for the very issues you've raised, without getting into the deal.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Don, thank you.
Thanks, Don.
My name's William Glancy. I'm from Gillette. I have a question for the committee. I would like to know if anyone from the committee has had the time to examine the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act.
Well, first, before I respond to that, I do apologize. I saw an email from you. I thought I responded regarding the conference down at Rutgers.
Right. Well, this is separate.
But I don't
from
want
that
you to
issue.
think I didn't respond to
Oh,
you.
no.
So
I appreciate that.
So sorry, I'm not able to attend because I have a previous engagement. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention.
No, you're welcome. Since you brought it up, I want to let everyone on the committee know, and I wasn't aware of this when I sent the email to the committee, but apparently registration for that event is closed. So if you haven't registered, it's just too late. But I wanted to mention the WIFIA because it does offer low-interest loans for infrastructure, for wastewater projects and things of that nature. So I don't know if anyone's had an opportunity to investigate this, but
I have not, and by the way, thank you for bringing that up, though, because on a different picture, I meant to mention this earlier. What I was going to suggest, and I still suggest, is perhaps we can hire a grant writer. I don't know if you can do that as a pay if successful, or do you pay him as a retainer? But I think what you're recommending and what other residents have recommended is we should look everywhere for any possible funding source to mitigate what we're going to have to pay.
Right.
So, and you know, you know the punishment for coming up with good ideas, right? In this town, we try to engage, and based on I can tell by your email previously and what you're commenting on tonight that you do have knowledge and an interest in this area. So perhaps, and I say half jokingly, but I'm not. Perhaps there is a committee that currently exists that you might be interested in, because like on the planning board, we have an environmental engineer who's invaluable to us.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what your specific background is, but you know, perhaps you can help us. You've located this potential source of funding. That's great.
Well, I just wanted to share this with you. There was a conference at NJ PAC in Newark on December 1st of last year, And that included a study that was submitted by Howard Newkrug and Diana Lynn. For those of you who may not know who Howard Newkrug is, he was the former CEO of Philadelphia Water. And he has nearly 40 years of experience in the water industry, so he's pretty knowledgeable on water infrastructure. And his report, along with Professor Lynn, who also was one of the authors, does make reference to this. And what I thought was interesting was he said in this report, as of the date that this was written, and I don't have the exact date, but he said no New Jersey entities sent a letter of inquiry to this program, though the most recent cycle resulted in more than $2 billion in loans. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to share this information. I don't know if it's appropriate or inappropriate, but I thought if you're not aware of it, it may be helpful to the township.
Can't hurt to ask.
Absolutely. I mean, we've already, the township has already leveraged New Jersey, I forget the environmental
Infrastructure Trust Fund. They
Trust
changed the name.
And that's
NJIT.
basically, you know, I mean, I think we on the last loan, I think the net was 1.7% or something like that. It's extraordinarily low rates. And in our conversation that I had back in December with the DEP, it's around 1% now that they have some stuff floating around.
Right.
You know, it kind of all depends on market and, you know, how many applications and all that stuff. So we have leveraged those low interest loans before, and they're great because they save us a substantial amount of money on interest, but we do still have the principal to pay back as part of that, and that's the largest nut out of all of it, so.
So grants would be better.
Yeah, grants are absolutely
Grants are
better.
good.
Yeah. But let me just add one other piece of information that I think I hope will be helpful. But this particular program, from what I read online, and I'm by no means an expert, but it said, what I read was that it works separately but in coordination with the state revolving fund, which I think what you may have alluded to earlier. So I think that's it's another potential source of potentially funding for the town to address these
If you could send that that information to us,
wastewater concerns.
that would be helpful if you could
Right.
forward
I'm sorry?
that. That would be helpful if you could forward that information to us, send us.
Right, I was going
I
to
can
ask
send you an email.
Yes,
if you could
perfect.
email
Perfect.
me, I'll ask our engineer to take a look at it. I'll share it with the governing body.
Oh, I'm happy to do that, of
Okay,
course.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to mention that when Committeeman Schuler was Mayor Schuler, at the end of the year, we had some appointments with 2 companies that are grant, they're not grant writers, but they find grants for sewer utility improvements, and we just never could get our schedules together, so now, I don't know who I'll be meeting with if you have time for that, but I do have 2 companies that we're looking at, we're talking to help us find some grants.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I hope it works out.
I hope so too.
Well,
And if you could just send your contact information to Nancy as well, I mean, we'll have your email.
So I'll just send it to I guess your email is on the
Probably,
website?
we don't mind. That's why we have the Township Committee email to each of us, but it may be more efficient if you go through Nancy. You can copy us, I don't mind.
Okay.
Nancy will, I think, be better placed to look into it specifically. But by all means, copy us.
Right.
Oh, I'm happy to do it. But your email is on
Yeah, it's
the website?
administrator@longhillnj.gov. It's on the website.
Oh, it is, okay, Nancy. Okay,
Malou.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Neil Lorber from Millington. You know, I have a lot to learn about the process here, the procedures, so I want to lay that out at the start tonight. you haven't already passed that sewer utility ordinance tonight, have you?
It was only introduced, and the public hearing will be,
28th of February.
Oh, this is not the public hearing?
no, it's just introduction.
But you're more than welcome to comment or ask questions.
Oh, okay, whatever. You see, I do have a lot to learn. But it's never too late.
Indeed.
About the sewer utility ordinance, I just wanted to raise two items. Is it unusual for this year's expenses to be thrown towards the future and be on next year's bill? Is that an unorthodox practice?
What are we talking about specifically?
Well, I heard it said that with the sewer utility ordinance, this year's expenses, I guess that meant 2017, will be thrown forward and will be billed on next year's sewer utility bill.
No, I think what Bruce was referring to is we don't, it's indeterminate at this point what that cost will be, so we don't know. But I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, so typically, the bills go out in June, let's call it, right? And we're billing in arrears, right? So the previous cycle, right?
Okay, so there's nothing new or special as applies to the, going on as applies to the sewer utility ordinance. That's standard operating procedure over many years.
All we're doing is we're taking the accounting out of the municipal operating budget and putting it into its own budget.
Oh, I'm not talking about that. I understand.
So the money that we're talking about has not changed. Last year it cost us $1.4 million to operate the sewer plant. That $1.4 million will come out of the municipal budget and go into the sewer utility budget now, right?
Yeah, but I'm asking, has that been the practice, let's say, over the last 5 years? That expenses in one year get billed in the next year for the sewer?
I don't think it's actually expenses. It's not that the expenses from 2017 are going to be billed for 2018. It's that when we determine what to charge for 2018, we're using it off of partially 2017's water usage.
Yeah, it's based on the water bills.
Right, because we need something to look back on.
Okay, but
calculate the rates.
Right.
Has this been standard operating procedure?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah, we're not,
So,
now, this is, as Bruce said, this is purely an accounting maneuver where we currently have a $1.4 million in expenses in the municipal budget and a $1.4 million revenue number in the budget. Both of those will be taken out. The net is zero, right?
yes, but
So
the billing practice of billing
the billing
forward
practice does not
is
change.
nothing new.
No.
Okay, that was my first concern. Now, my second concern's a little less tasty. Excuse me.
A little less tasty than sewers?
Yes, now you hear things around town, and some people will attach the label of rumor or rumors to these things that go around. But very often, more often than we might think, there is substance and truth to what others might call rumor. Well, I can't back up what I'm going to say right now, but I've heard it around town that historically, the general budget for the township has benefited from having the sewer expenses existing as a component of that general budget. So, I'm not trying to make a fight out of that, but I would ask that before you go ahead and pass this sewer utility ordinance, that there be some reconciliation of, let's say, the recent history. I don't want to be too extreme about this. Let's say over the last 5 years, how much has the township general budget benefited in dollars from having the sewer factor as a component of the general budget? It's like two men in business, two partners. If they split, they want to reconcile. Just one second, Mayor. Well, I know you're the mayor, Brent.
Mayor.
Brendan, you are. I'm trying to keep
So
on
is
top
Bruce.
of everything right. Musical chairs. You know, I'm asking that at least over a reasonable period, let's say the last 5 years, this issue be studied. How much has the general budget benefited from the sewer component? And then, like as I said, two partners splitting up in business, they reconcile the books so that maybe when the sewer utility is born, or as Charles says, reborn, maybe there's some money coming to the sewer utility. The money that came from the utility into the general budget, as someone mentioned, I think Mr. Pigeon mentioned, someone tonight mentioned, there has been movement of funds. Former mayor mentioned it. Yes. So, you know, I'm asking that you include an examination of the recent history, 5 years, of money movement between the sewer component and the general budget, or vice versa, and that reconciliation of that factor be addressed, and whatever is found be included into the sewer utility as it is born or reborn. Maybe there's a net debt that the sewer utility is going to be faced as it begins. But maybe there is money coming to it from the general budget, looking at the last 5 years. So I'm requesting that you folks write that into the ordinance, that factor be researched and acknowledged and respected on the basis of whatever is found through that investigation. Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, Mr. Lauber brings up an interesting point. Nancy, if you could find out whether the current debt that's associated with the sewer gets transferred into this utility, because that would certainly have a major impact on how we go through the budgeting process. Because I'm under the impression it's $4 to $5 million,
It would have to, yeah.
right?
It has to.
Right? But that debt service is not accounted for under the $1.4 million.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to hold you to it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
It's supposed to be. Yeah, yeah. You know, to answer your question, so two parts. Yes, we can certainly do a brief reconciliation. I say brief because in about 2011, the practice of general funds subsidizing the rates ended, right? Since about 2011, the target was if we've spent X on the sewer system, that's how much we're going to collect in bills. So there could very well have been, because it's not a separate set of books, it's not an exact, to the penny, but certainly within a, reasonable couple of thousands of dollars either way was targeted to cover the expenses that the plant incurred.
Well, frankly, I've heard the so-called rumor, if anyone wants to call it that, is that there has been surplus funds in the sewer component.
No.
And that the general fund benefited from, by use of those surplus funds. So rather than, this judgment or that, how about a little bit of a mini research project to check it out?
Yep, it wouldn't be that difficult. I mean, we've got lens spreadsheets from the past 2 or 3 years during the budget cycle, so that information is probably readily available, so.
Yep, I can
But we
find
can
out.
have the CFO take a look at it and he could, the new guy in.
Yep.
Don't
Yep,
believe
I wrote it down.
don't believe everything you read on Facebook. Don't believe everything you read on Facebook.
Yeah.
Well,
It's usually wrong.
as I don't want to repeat my whole opening effort, but there may be some truth to it. And I think it breaks in the favor of the sewer count, but others may think otherwise. But I'm I'm urging you to look into it. Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Tuesday's not enough?
I love it here. Good evening, Tom Grosskopf, Gillette. Speaking of Gillette, we have a little train station you might have noticed. There's a little one over there, like
I see it every-
$300 a year.
I see it
think it's
every day.
$310.
Yeah, 340.
Is it 340 this year?
340.
I'm just made of money. I didn't pay attention. I just write the check. How many parking spots do we allow for that? 200 or 300?
No,
200?
85, I heard? 185, sorry.
185, and there are about 110.
We sell 130 tags for Gillette.
Okay.
I think that's for Gillette.
So we're getting in about $35,000.
That goes into a parking trust fund.
You're getting
That's-
ahead of me.
Yeah.
Let the man speak, Cornell.
What I'm asking is, can we put in some lighting on the Jersey Avenue buffer that faces towards the parking area at the train station? It's our property, it's not the railroad's property, because it's pitch black over there. I've spoken to a couple of people who have been around, and I understand it's been noted that it's dark. I mean, now it's staying light past 5 o'clock, thank God. But you get off the train at night, if it's icy, fortunately, we don't have any of that going on either. But if it's icy, if it's late and there's somebody hiding between cars, nobody's
What
gonna
is that,
see it.
the southwestern part of the lot? Is that?
Well, that's the worst area, yeah, but even just all along the lot. If we could put 2 or 3 light stanchions facing towards, so this way it's not facing
Yeah, we
towards
gotta
the
Put it
pub.
further away from the tracks and face it towards the tracks. Otherwise,
Exactly.
you'd be shining into the houses.
To the home that's just there, the one that was just built, right?
Right.
Because I don't use that station, but that, so I imagine, based on your comments.
I use it, it's dark.
No, but you go out the other way. I guess some people walk out.
But it doesn't matter,
that
if
part of
you're,
the lot.
if you've parked on the set, there's a big center aisle. So you've parked on the other side of the center aisle, you have to walk through cars, and it's on an angle like this, so any light coming from the train, or even just the landing, you can't see what the ground looks like, or if there's somebody hiding behind a car. So.
I have no, I mean,
we should look into it.
for sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know
it's a
me,
peril
I'm
that,
into
I
darkness.
think it's a peril that would be easily averted, and it's not gonna take up a lot of money, see, you gotta not go in there.
Does NJ Transit have any authority over that lot at all?
So they actually own the lot.
They own the lot,
So
but
New Jersey Transit owns the
but the
lot.
Jersey Avenue buffer, they don't.
And we're responsible for maintaining it.
All right.
Yeah, right. I don't think you'd get any, well, we could probably get a light. I know the buffer, they're probably gonna consider wetlands. because it's
I
so.
mean, there are some things we don't need to speak with them about.
Yeah, I mean,
This is one of them.
yeah, I mean, it's something that we should
We
look
could
into.
certainly
Absolutely.
put even a light in the middle if we needed to.
Yeah.
As much as I'd hate to do that.
And we can use our railroad trust fund money for things that are off-site as long as they benefit commuters. That's the only test.
That would be excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I listened to your point about putting a light in the middle.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
And as much as
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
for it,
I'd rather not.
but then it's going to shine towards the people's houses, and I don't want to
Yep.
bother anybody
Yep.
who's living in
No,
our town.
I agree.
But I want to keep everybody else safe. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
Good evening to you. Happy New Year.
And glad to see that you made it all the way back from the President's Mayoral Conference today.
Good evening, folks. John Bangs, Millington, New Jersey. Anytime I hear the three-letter abbreviations DEP or EPA, I always like to step up and say something. I think we have a bit of a problem in town with enforcement in both DEP and EPA, and food for thought would be looking at the history of Love Canal in Wikipedia, whereby there was a large toxic waste dump upon which they built homes, and everybody in the homes got extremely ill and died and passed away from all obnoxious and atrocious diseases, and kids born with extra limbs and things. And the chemicals that are up there, some of them are in the Millington site, the OU1 site, the TIFA site. They dug up a sewer line, I think it was about 18 months ago in the summertime, and the EPA showed up, did testing of the dirt, and found out that there are extremely high levels of methyl mercury, so much so that in their last 5-year report they said that they'd be thinking and considering about changing the use of the property itself, the allowances, and this was 12, 14 feet down where the pipe was, and they found it all the way down. They left that dirt piled up in the driveway where it washed down, and kids were walking through it, going into the gym. Could have been your kids. I don't know. I know it's not mine. I know where he lives. Needless to say, I hear dumping in other sites where the EPA or DEP is very upset, and yet I also know of areas where the land has been filled all the way down into the river, upon which it's now flooded, and there's been a wall built, and there is, from what I understand, a pesticide containment building that is very close to the river, and nice shrubs. It looks beautiful, but needless to say, it's an encroachment on the floodway itself. And
Where specifically are you referring to?
it's on Plainfield Avenue. If you go up Plainfield towards the Goddard School, the new Goddard School, okay, it's 3 lots south of there, up against the river. We had I can't think what his name is, Mr. Cheshire, for all practical purposes, ran a small landscaping business out of there, upon which he was allowed 2 or 3 trucks. New companies have moved in, and now there's approximately, I'd say 35 to 50 trucks back there pulling out of the driveway. By ordinance, he was only allowed, as I say, and he had a hard time getting that. And
Well, I'm sorry,
Yes.
you lost me there. This is again on Plainfield?
yes,
Last house on the left.
it's the last house on the left-hand side. I think it's number 79.
Okay.
And in there right now, they now have gravelled the entire area as a parking lot, which is now considered impervious surfaces, which wasn't before.
No doubt. Nancy, Nancy's writing it down already.
Yes,
So,
please.
Yeah, I think if it's the same property, when I
has
first
been
came
s-
here, Tom DeLeo went out and talked to them, and I'm not sure if it's the same one, but it was on Plainfield Avenue. It was a complaint about landscaping trucks, but,
It's only one.
right,
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
only one piece of property, and there's, I'd say 25 to 30 trucks in there now, in
So-
that neighborhood, that pull out every morning and come back every night, as opposed to the 3 that were allowed when Mr. Cheshire was there.
we'll look into it.
That's something that zoning issue that we can get Tom on it, right?
And,
You can report that to
well,
the
I
zoning
know that-
officer
I
as
know that
well.
Tom has looked into it, and nothing's been done.
Well, I believe the complaint that came in when I first started was about him, the owner of that property, having his landscape equipment on the neighbor's property, and Tom
There was
talked.
something like that, but
Right.
needless to say, now there's an entire, it's instead of a little family business, which Mr. Cheshire actually lived in the house and had a couple of landscaping trucks, a trailer, and I think a pickup truck, and maybe some lawnmowers and stuff like that. Now you have a huge company back there.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that we can look
It
into.
is
Right, I'll make sure the
Thanks for
zoning
bringing it
officer
to
looks
our
into it.
Beyond
attention.
absurd, when, you know, if I had that in my backyard, you guys would be going wild. And, but nothing seems to have taken place.
Speaking of which, we're gonna go check your backyard.
Feel free to, come on in. You can have a tractor run if you want. More than welcome.
I'm still wondering if that fire engine is in the back there.
Oh, no, I left that in Florida. That's where it is. You know, one of these days I'll bring it up there. I'll blow the horn on Main Street, how's that sound?
Okay.
During one of our picnics or whatever, outings.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you, John.
You're welcome. I appreciate it, and I just figured I'd just bring it to your attention that it's something that seems to be neglected in this town, because you do see things filled in the areas and the wetlands and things like that. And, on the environmental committee upon which I'm on, I see things where people go through great hoops and running and all that to get through putting a building on a piece of property.
No doubt.
And yet, people blatantly dump garbage wherever they want, or junk, or toxic waste, or whatever. And the other point that I was making before with Love Canal is the same chemicals, some of the same chemicals that are in Love Canal are in the same area as the OU1 site or the Tifa site. And if we build housing on top of that, it's like putting a glass bubble on top of a boiling pot, and it just collects and concentrates the chemicals in the housing, and you end up with mysterious diseases and things along those lines. You have retail stores which are contaminated with materials that you'd be purchasing and taking home, all fruits, vegetables, and things along those lines. Love to pick up organic chemicals, and you take them home, you eat them. And, you know, it's a problem.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Please state your name.
My name is Roseanne Colori Millington. I just wanted to thank the committee for listening to the resident and providing us for limiting solicitation and giving us the no-knock rule. You guys did a good job.
Well, I thank you. You're the one that brought it to our attention.
You listen, which is a good thing. So take the win. I'll take the win, you take the win, all right?
Thanks, Roseanne.
First statement.
Kathy Leary Millington. Some nights I'm happier to be here than others. Tonight happens to be one of those better nights. Guy, I was really happy to hear that you're considering hiring a grant writer for the sewer. That would be awesome. I believe Bruno Associates did reach out to Cornell, and
that was one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And that was that's actually one that Sussex Borough's been working with, and they've gotten $1.5 million.
Sussex Borough?
Yes,
Yep.
Sussex
Thank
Borough.
you.
And they've gotten $1.5 million in grant money.
1.6 million.
Thank you. Great to hear about the charging station. It's just one of those things that sets us apart in a good way. So, thank you. I'm not sure how to feel about the sewer and the accounting. I think we need to, I'll probably email you a bunch of questions at some point to see how that's going to work. In terms of, it seemed like the ordinance was written, though, that expenses from last year could be folded into this year. So, and I was wondering if that included like the if there were any monies in terms of for the preparing for the sale, or the $80,000 that we've allocated for this report.
I actually think that those monies came out of the general fund, right?
No, those monies are all baked into the sewer rate.
Is that right? Okay. But not the referendum money.
Yes.
Is that right?
I'm pretty
Well, that's something we can, Mr. Laura mentioned, we can look into that.
We can double check, but I'm pretty sure we put money into the rate base for that effort because it was a sewer-related effort.
I think that's right.
We can answer that exactly. So
But that
I
would
don't
have
wanna-
been the intention all along, when the expense was incurred would, yeah.
Okay, and the only thing that seems to be a difference between like that kind of thing and you know, how you tend to proceed going forward is, I'm not sure that we were allocating portions of people's salary to.
We were.
We were?
We were, it just, again, not a precise science.
Okay.
More of a, you know, oh gee whiz, okay, let's take 10% of, I mean, it's arguably gonna be the same thing anyway, but we did take in all the partial personnel costs and everything else. So it shouldn't capture much more than it's doing now.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't precise, but it was
No,
somewhat accurate, right? It wasn't just
right.
pulled out of thin air, right?
We didn't split hairs and make it, you know, 100% perfect because that would have just been too much work. It's probably 98.5% perfect.
Okay. Like I said, if I have more questions, I'll just email them to you.
Okay.
And also, that was another thing, Guy, that you mentioned about how transparent things are, and you are. And it's much different than in other towns and other places and other boards. And I really do appreciate that you indulge all of
And
us.
I appreciate you saying it. Thank you.
There was, okay, really quickly about the parking. I watched the planning board meeting, and it doesn't seem like we solved the problem that the residents came to you about. I don't think it was about a year ago, about Railroad Avenue. I mean, the problem is that they're blocking people's driveways. And even if you put more parking, if you don't keep them from parking on that side of the street, they're still gonna.
We didn't spend as much time as I would have liked, but somewhere embedded in that, maybe you turned away for a second. We did reference that, in my opinion, as I don't know how the others will look at it, we're going to have to restrict parking on one side of the street because besides blocking people into their own homes, which is just plain rude, it presents, at least in my mind, a safety issue.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that would be a decision for this committee anyway, right? As far as restricted parking, but I don't think we're ready to take any action until we have some form of relief.
You can make the street wider, though. You don't have to restrict the parking.
Or you can make the street wider,
Right.
If we're allowed to do that.
Yeah, we're allowed to do it.
Sure. But yeah, the thing is, though, if you give them more parking, like, you know, 10 feet away, and they can park right here, and there's no penalty for parking right here, they're gonna park right here, so. But, and then I think I had sent you like an analysis of parking in general that just kind of shows you that the more parking you have, that's kind of a drag on your ratables. So it's like even like the Valley Mall is only like $23,000 an acre in terms of our ratables because of all the parking. And if you do analysis of Millington, downtown Millington, and you look, you would think that the bank is certainly the largest taxpayer, but in terms of the productivity of the land, it is down pretty far down the list, as opposed to, and actually the garage, Long Hill Auto, I think, is the most productive in terms of how much they pay in taxes per acre. So something maybe you should.
Don't tell Bob that.
Well, he can figure it out himself.
Charge us more to fix our cars.
Or he might come to you for an abatement or something. Anyhow, and just dovetailing on what Mr. Bangs was saying, I know you guys have seen this, Guy and Brendan, you've seen this. This is, I promise to bring you.
But I gave it to Don Richardson. He was the gentleman I referenced
Right.
earlier.
Right,
he's
but
more
I think
knowledgeable.
that you guys need it as well, because there are things that are going to be under, obviously, it's a huge undertaking. If any of this goes through, that, everybody's going to be involved, and it's not just going to be the planning board issue. So, in particular, one of the things that was talked about at the master plan committee was, first of all, making them, are you moving forward with making the master plan committee a subcommittee of the planning board, or is it?
The history, you weren't here at that time. The history of that, it was formed, I believe, at the end of 2013 when I was mayor. It was a mayoral ad hoc committee. To Mr. Arenowicz's point, the desire was that the master plan would be completed sometime in 2016, correctly so. It has not been completed. It's 2 years later, so it hasn't met its goal. But it's a mayoral ad hoc committee. It serves at the pleasure of really this committee, even though we call it a mayoral ad hoc committee. We can dissolve it at any time.
But Guy, I think we talked at the planning board about this, and we decided
To keep it open.
to keep it open as a mayoral committee rather than
Okay.
go back. I mean, and David Hands seemed to.
And the many,
You okay with
Debbie,
that?
I think you mentioned the meeting dates are already there, and if not, they're going to be put on this week.
For the
Master
master
plan
plan,
com-
I have not yet received.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, you will. The schedule, they came up with a schedule.
Unless I received it really early at the beginning of the year with the regular board.
No,
then it-
no, you would have received it yesterday,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, over the next few days, they say.
Yeah, I'll put it
So,
as soon as we get it, we'll
Yeah,
pop it on.
we'll put it on.
All right, I guess I misunderstood, because I thought it was, you were actually moving forward and making it but you're not. That's okay.
Making it a what?
Making it a subcommittee of the planning board.
No, you are correct. We
Okay,
did
we are.
discuss that as a possibility, and then David Hands, who is the chair of that, because I was concerned that it wasn't moving as quickly as maybe we would like it to.
Yeah.
But he said they're on the verge of completing some of the goals that they had set. So we kept it open as a mayoral ad hoc committee, as opposed to being a subset of the planning board itself.
But one of the things that we did, at David's urging, was to enlarge it a little bit with a couple more members of the public. So that's, I don't know if they've been appointed yet, but that was something that David thought was important, and we certainly had no problem with it.
Now, they do a lot of the heavy lift. They don't get a lot of credit. Not that we get a lot of credit, but we're visible, for better or for worse.
Mr. Mayor, do you need a puppy?
That's my line, buddy. But I could use a hug. But they do a lot of the grunt work in the back, and sometimes we take shots at them, whether a member of the public or even a member of the committee up here. But they dedicated an awful lot of their time without a whole lot of thanks. So.
And part of that discussion too was potentially getting them some money so they can do some studies and to move that process along. So, and particularly now that we have this report, and I understand that we do have somebody on the planning board who is, has some experience in that, but I mean, this is a lot more than, I mean, this is 528 pages, and this isn't all of it. And this is a single report. First of all, it was given to the DEP in November of 2015, and we just got it because we didn't know to look for it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What is it?
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the preliminary assessment site investigation report for the Tifa site.
Thank you.
So
Preliminary.
preliminary. Yeah, there's 20 areas of concern that the environmental company identified, and then they identified another 8 that needed additional investigation. So, and there's 2 30,000-gallon underground storage tanks that have been abandoned, closed out and abandoned. There was a sluiceway, and there was an oil pit, and on top of the 90,000 cubic yards of asbestos that's going to remain there. And in addition to the asbestos there's a mercury that was associated with the production of the asbestos that's in the mound that's going to stay there. So, first of all, again, as Mr. Banks said, I don't think you should be putting housing there. And when we put Tifa on the list with Fair Share, we didn't have this. Nobody had this, and Fair Share didn't have it either. And that was one of the questions I asked at the fairness hearing. They did not have it. They have it now.
But as the judge said, Kathy, if DEP approves the use in the cleanup, they have jurisdiction, we don't. So we can't deny a development approval based on environmental factors if they receive DEP clearance. So it's really between PRISM and DEP.
Yes, PRISM, DEP definitely has jurisdiction, but the other part of that is that we're kind of fumbling around here in the dark as residents. We don't know what's going on, and I don't think that, you know, as experienced as you all are, having been on this committee for a number of years, I don't think you have the, I'm sorry, you don't think you have the experience to deal with this either. So, again.
No, we don't.
Okay, okay.
The authority. You couldn't do anything about it if you knew about it.
You can't. Yes, there are things that you can't. You can talk to the DEP about.
Absolutely.
Okay. The same way you're talking to the DEP about the Rossi list, you can talk to them about what they're going to do going forward. So, and I think that we need to have somebody who's going to advise us and be in that capacity. So, again, I would ask that we find some way to take this off of our affordable housing list, because I think, you know, you have that, there's that scene in Erin Brockovich where she hands them the glass of water from the contaminated site and nobody will drink it. But it's kind of like the same thing with that site. I would never live there. You would never live there. You would never want your kids to live there, even after it's cleaned up. So why are we gonna offer this to families?
For better or for worse, I grew up in Jersey City. You can't scare me with contaminated sites.
But we can't deny a property owner the right to develop his property.
Right. And
if in fact he complies with DEP regulations. And at the fairness hearing, Judge Hubner did.
You don't have
explain
to change zoning, though. You don't have to change zoning. You know, you don't have, I can't build a 3-story water slide in my backyard because zoning won't allow it. I can't build an accessory apartment off my detached garage because zoning won't allow it. So it's not that the property owner has the right to do whatever they want with their property.
Yeah, but I think what's lost in this is, and Jack, obviously this is your bailiwick, anybody who buys a property in a town like Long Hill, if we have not made an accommodation for fair share housing, can sue, and they'd win. So even though it's not zoned for something, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't, okay. And we do have an agreement that gives us immunity, so no, they can't sue us. And the same way they can't sue us just because the elite the redevelopment zone fell out. You know, if we were to renegotiate something about this Tifa property based on this new information, they couldn't necessarily just sue us right off either.
The DEP are the people that said we cannot put residential housing on what was or is the redevelopment zone.
Correct.
So, you know, we can't have the DEP as our friend in one hand and our enemy in the other. They're the authority, and we do what they tell us to do, right? I mean,
Well, I'm not saying, I am not suggesting that they are the enemy. I'm not suggesting they are the enemy, and they're just, and I don't think they.
Right,
Government is not an adversarial body. You're supposed to work with each part of government is supposed to work with the other part. The residents supposed to work with government.
But I think the point is, right, this township committee went ahead and put its support behind redeveloping an area on Valley Road, and the DEP came along and said, no, you can't do that. If this township committee decides to go and throw a set of ordinances for the Tifa property that says this is going to become a residential use at the densities outlined in the agreement, and the DEP looks at the property and says no, well, then we're back to square one. But if they say yes, well, they said yes. They put their ruling onto it. So as Jack said, we've got no place making environmental decisions, and I'd love to read that, but I probably wouldn't understand
No, you wouldn't.
three-quarters of what's going on in it.
No,
And I
agree.
wouldn't know whether or not, numbers can be scary, but for all you know, they could be considered background noise, right? They could be no different than naturally occurring elements. I don't know what that, I don't know what that is,
I
right?
can't read that much of
Right.
this and understand that much of it. There's some pretty clear language in here.
So
that
we'd
says
have to
that's not
rely
naturally occurring.
on what the DEP says. Is it safe? And what would they need to do to make it safe?
And Prism had that information when they closed on the property.
And Jack, do we have any
Prism had the
standing?
information.
No.
Prism's going to sell the property in 5 years because that's what they don't hold on to
Private
anything
property,
they
we
have.
can't just go on there. And secondly, if you're gonna go put residential units on a property, the environmental cleanup's even more strict than it is for commercial. So you can sit here and whine about it all day, but we can't do anything about it right now.
So much for working together.
No, but Kathy, I think the thing is, right, and this is Guy's personal copy, right? Yeah. I think the thing is
Does it have
that,
pictures? Okay, I'll go to
Jack,
Oh,
if you could
There's
opine on,
maps with X's and.
if you could opine on the fact that we have no standing here with it's strictly between Prism and DEP, the town can. If you could explain exactly what the town
But
can do
we're
here.
bound to rezone it not because of anything the DEP said. We're bound to rezone it because of our agreement with Fair Share.
But we can't zone property into utility. These points were all raised at the fairness hearing. And as I said, Prism went into this with their eyes open. They probably paid for most of these studies.
They did.
Before they purchased the property. So if in fact they comply with DEP's requirements, there's nothing we can do about it. We did rezone it, but it's been in the master plan since 1995 as a mixed-use residential site. So if Prism had challenged that zoning as industrial, they probably would have won because they could have pointed to the fact that it's been in the master plan for the last 22 or 23 years.
Anyway, to be continued.
To be changed. Thanks.
Can I
Thank you.
ask if there's a version of that document that fits on here?
Oh, I emailed. I did. There's a. It's digitized.
You read it first and write a synopsis.
It's digitized. I can email it to you. I like the hard copy. It's easier to flip through.
So I'll read them on the
Do you need these back, by the way?
Summarize it down
No,
to one
those are
page,
yours.
please.
Because you only had 2 copies.
I'll get more.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
One page.
Hurry up, Bruce was about to make a motion to adjourn. No, take your time, please.
I promise to be brief. Pam Ogens, Millington.
Spell your last name for me, please.
Ogens.
Thank you.
And just to quote the excerpt, which actually I'm pleased to see in tonight's meeting, that you're investigating, this was from the December 13th meeting, the Township Committee meeting, where it says this afternoon, so that would have been December 13th, that there was the meeting with the DEP regarding the sewer system. The DEP is happy with the progress being shown by the committee in its immediate ordering of the capacity study after the sewer referendum had failed. There is a finance program offered by the NJEIT that may help with long-term funding, offers 30 years, less than 1%. So I'm pleased to see that there is some action being taken on that, even more so with grants, so get the money rather than having to accrue the interest. So I appreciate your efforts with that, and I know you will continue. I haven't read the whole TIFA site DEP report. You can see how voluminous it is. I just read a couple pages of it. Scares the shit out of me, quite honestly.
Getting back to the sewer plant.
I know that I knowingly would not live someplace like that, and morally and ethically, I have a problem with that. Before we moved into our house, we saw that there was a Superfund site. We saw that there had been remediation. I did read in the report that there is an obligation for every 5-year monitoring of that site. I don't know if that's been done. This was in the, I imagine it would have been, this was in the 2010, so it would have been 2015, 2016, I guess the monitoring would have been done. And just as I say, from a moral, ethical standing, I have a little problem with putting residents on a site that used to be Superfund, and we really don't know from periodic little tests underneath the asphalt. I'm a retired nurse. I've seen people, I've seen the consequences of environmental disasters that were discovered too late. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying all evening.
Yeah.
Hi again, guys. Roseanne Calori, Wellington. I just have one question. I know you guys know the answer to this. I was trying to explain to someone. A few years back, we sent a house-to-house search of making sure people's sump pumps did not go down into the sewer system. Why did we do that?
Why did we do that?
To prevent infiltration and inflow, because that water is adding to the flow going to the plant, and therefore increasing the flow, and as a result exceeding our capacity. So it was just a way to try to cut down on the excess flow.
Okay, so to let you know, since I've started reading that 568-page document, page 27, there are 2 sump pumps in Tifa that are being drained into our sewer plants, and it's documented in that report. So we may want to go after those people.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something we can enforce.
Yeah.
And given the chemicals that are listed in that report, that may be going into our sewer system, which worries me. And I agree with everyone here. I wouldn't want to live there, and I wouldn't want to put people there. I don't care their economics, their social economics. I just don't think we should build houses in a place like that. Thank you.
I was so happy you left before just saying thank you to us.
You took one win.
Yeah.
Yeah, Don Farnell again. If you'll indulge me for just a second, it's a housekeeping item, literally. 2 years ago, I came before the Township Committee complaining about the physical condition of this building, particularly the paint on the front facade of this building and the doors between the library and so on and so forth. It's now 2 years. Now the railings up to the library look like hell. There's past jobs. I would, as you develop your budget, I would ask that you find the funding to do a professional paint job. It's a great building. Deferred maintenance is going to go to hell. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
So just so you know, Don, last year was the first year any committee put money into the budget for the maintenance of this building. We put in, I don't know, $500 or $7,500. I mean, just a small amount of money. It was the first time ever.
Well, I haven't asked you about the landscaping in the parking lot. That'll be another year.
Charles Arenowitz again, Millington. I think after the election, we appointed the engineering firm for $80,000 to conduct a study that was going to be done in 60 days. Could you update me where that is?
Those 60 days are going to be up in the middle to end of February.
When did we award that?
I think it was December, but by the time we got the contracts back, the deadline is the middle to end of February, maybe the 3rd week. I don't have the exact date.
It was 60 days from the commencement date of the
60
contract.
days
right?
from-
Oh, okay. Like I said, I get confused. As Mr. Lorber so elegantly pointed out, I too have a lot to learn. But I do know this. Parthenon Realty leveled the lot next to Walgreens illegally. And no one from this town charged them with that violation. So, as Attorney Pigeon pointed out tonight that we're at an impasse with them on the property, I think we've got another straw in it, or another arrow in our box that says, hey, you violated the laws of this town by leveling that lot. We didn't charge you, but we could. So get rid of the contaminated dirt and leaves and your nursery to dump there, and let's move forward. So you can put that in your quiver, Mr. Pigeon, that they violated the law. We're not issued a summons for it, but clearly they leveled that lot in violation.
Yep, thank
We
you.
all know that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chuck. I see one lonely soul. He sat here all evening. He's come up here to say thank you to the committee for the excellent job it's
I'm not
done.
here enough. My name is Chris Roddy. I'm the owner of Engineered Plastic Products in Mercer Street,
Okay.
Can you spell your last name for me, please?
R-A-T-T-I.
Thank you.
I gotta ask a question first because it may usurp what I was gonna say. I may have missed something. I read an article in the paper that you were resubmitting the redevelopment plan of Valley Road because I back up to the thermal property. Now, is that, which, was it both sides that you can't do on, or?
Bruce can answer that.
Yeah, so the south side of the Valley Road is even worse than the north side. But the north side doesn't have available paths for people to exit should a flooding event occur. So if you look at the elevations of the street, basically, right?
Okay.
Mercer Street, Valley Road, Main Street, right?
I basically have lived at my factory since my dad started it, so I know all the flooding issues.
Right, but there's but you can't put residential in those areas because they need a way to get out if it floods, right? You're a
Right.
business, you don't count.
Oh, actually, luckily, the west corner of my property doesn't flood.
Yeah.
They're the same way. It's just an odd
But
drop.
because you're in the floodplain,
Right.
we would need to get that hardship waiver, same as we're doing for the thermoplastic, if you wanted to put residential there. A business doesn't have to apply for that waiver.
Right. That wasn't my worry. It was, I was hearing that the DEP was talking about having to raise the road beds and stuff, and I was worried about how I was going to survive.
Right.
3 stories on 2 sides of me, of the building, and the raising of the road.
Right, so they would, to accommodate this, they would actually have to raise Mercer Street at the gutter to get the elevation of the road high enough, but they would also have to raise the elevation on Valley Road, on Main Street, on Passaic, all the way down at the end of Mercer to the west, and it's just untenable. You just can't do it.
So
Now-
my worry was what was going to happen with me with any of the, my worry still is with the redevelopment, what's going to happen to me, to my ability to operate.
Right.
Because I spent a certain amount of time up here.
Now I remember.
Some of you remember.
Yep, absolutely.
Trying to get me out of the eminent domain mess.
Right.
Me and the house next door to me.
Right.
And we're both worried about having a 3-story building sitting there overlooking us.
Bruce, I can say that's a moot point now. We've
Yeah,
moved on from that.
We can't put residential there. Can't do it.
Right,
So
it's
so
not
that
gonna be-
design is,
Right.
Right.
So until the next plan comes up, I should just stay and watch.
right, you're right. There's no plan at this point.
But it won't be
because
residential.
we
It
don't
won't be three
have,
stories.
Well, it's also how much, because one of my plans was to buy that lot between my building and the house, because I needed the parking.
Right.
Among other things.
Right.
And I haven't been able to do that because of this
Right.
mess.
Right.
So what I'd love to do is be able to get that subdivided so I can get it, because it would definitely allow me to do a lot better in terms of the maintenance and the appearance of my property if I have less worry
Is the
about.
property you're referring to part of the Thermoplastics
Yes.
property?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that
Thermoplastics
little
goes from
tongue that
Valley
goes
over
into
to
Mercer.
Gotcha.
So then I guess the question is how long are we going to let the redevelopment exercise run? Or how long does it need to run before we?
Can't we just?
yeah,
I mean, we can't leave it there
I
indefinitely
mean,
because he
I think, if we don't come up with an idea on what to do about that thermoplastic sites, then, we're gonna terminate it.
Do we have a time frame of that?
I
Guesstimate.
I do not have a time frame.
Well, the one thing to remember is that the south side of the thermal South Burton, had a buyer who was going to redevelop it for, a little condo for, there was 3 or 4
Yeah,
different
but
people.
putting lipstick on a pig doesn't really help this
Well,
township.
actually, if you
You know?
saw his rendering of what he had planned, it looks as good as any other development you're going to get.
I don't know about
It was
that.
still, that was only the Thermoplastics
Yeah.
building.
You still have the old scissors building, you have the building, the haunted house on the corner, you got the dry you got the dry cleaners, so you got more than just the one property.
Right, I understand that, but I'm just, some of it could have been fixed.
The goal is to get rid of the unsightliness and then to improve the rateable for this community. I mean, it's not a week goes by, somebody doesn't say to me, when are you going to do something? Well, we've been trying.
And so is the owners, so they have been trying to, and in a couple of cases, they've been denied.
Right.
Trying to improve, so, thank you very much.
Thank you for being a longtime business owner in this town.
60 years this year.
Uh-oh, Dennis, sorry, I didn't even know you were there. You were so quiet.
Dennis Sandow, Millington, and I'm a very patient person. Those of you who were around may remember the hurricane that took out Galveston in 1900.
I missed that one, Dennis.
400,000 people were left homeless, and the entire city of Galveston was decimated. They rebuilt Galveston on 17 feet of fill. There ain't nothing wrong with Galveston today that 17 feet of fill didn't cure.
This is New Jersey, not Texas.
Can I ask where they,
2018.
should I ask where they got it from?
Jersey City.
And here we are talking about inches. Quickie, the lot at the south end of Plainfield Road that was talked about a little bit earlier, not only is it harboring trucks and a lot of gravel and so on, it is in the conservation zone, which means that any business operating there is not permitted under the zoning ordinance. It's not in the business zone. So on top of everything else, they got a use variance issue. And if the administration wants to address that, I'd like to call your attention to some shortcomings in the construction office. I got a call today from a dear friend of ours, and I say ours because you guys know him, trying to sell his house, and all he has to do is get the oil tank out before he can put it on the market. His contractor can't pull the oil tank out of the ground without a permit. Now, I ask you, how much trouble is it to issue a permit to pull out an oil tank? It's not like you gotta go through the construction code line by line to find anything out about the details of nails and thickness and everything. It's a tank, you pull it out, you fill in the hole. The weather is beautiful. His contractor would like to start that work, and then he can get on with the sale. Took 19 days to get a permit. And every time the contractor called and said, "Is my permit ready?" "We're too busy, we don't have the time to issue permits." Is that exactly the way we are intending the construction office should be working?
No, the answer to, if pregnant pause there, so no, that's not the way.
If in fact it's true.
No, I think
I know the
investigate.
employees, there's no way. I mean, I'll look into it, but there's no way that Kelly talks to people that way.
It turns out, and this changed my speech slightly, it turns out the permit was issued this afternoon, and so I can't tell you to go jump on it tomorrow morning because the permit was finally issued, but it was, the application was the 5th of the month, and today's the 20, you do the math.
What, 24?
19 days. And that was an easy one. What if there are applications pending that are a little bit harder than pulling out an empty tank?
I'll look into it.
This goes to the whole issue of credibility of our entire construction and zoning process, which remains a
Work
thorn
in progress.
Excuse me?
Work in progress.
No, it's not even a work in progress, because for the first time in 3 years, we did not appoint a process improvement committee. My last item has to do with a request that I sent a week ago for discussion about scheduling road repairs. I will not ask you to get into it, but I would like the courtesy of someone to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Charles Renowitz, Millington. I have my coat on, so this is going to be brief. But Mr. Sandow reminded me of a situation I'd like to share with all of you. On November 27th, I went to take a shower and I had no hot water. So I called a reputable firm in our town, and they replaced my water heater. And they said, well, there's new regulations. I got to put this overflow tank. I said, fine, do whatever you got to do. I'll get the permit. On November 27th, I submitted my application after the supplier filled it out for me. I brought it down here. 1 week ago, they approved my hot water heater. However, when I submitted the application on November 27th, they permitted me to go forward with the installation so my wife and I could take a warm shower for 2.5 months. I agree with Mr. Sandow, not very often, but I do tonight, that we need to look at the permit process in the construction office. And I paid my fee of $48 and paid the vendor, and I have hot water, but it took a long time to get approved. So you can look into that also. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chuck. Thank you, everyone. I was going to just say thank you.
Did we just get Dennis?
And speaking of this building needing a paint job and a major repair job on the doors in the back and spending a few dollars, we're now coming up on 15 years moving into this building. And I walked into an office this morning and the window was open. And I said, why are we still, after 15 years, heating the outdoors in the middle of winter? And the answer was because we can't adjust the heat. Every single year for the past 14 years, we have talked about getting somebody in here who knows how to adjust the heat. We've got how many air conditioners lined up outside, how many furnaces in the attic, with zoned and this, that, and the next thing. And we're still opening the windows in the winter to cool the building off? Does this make sense? We hold energy audits. My God, how much money have we spent on energy audits? No one noticed that the windows were open?
The energy audit is free. So hopefully they come up with a solution.
No, we have employees who are perpetually hot and open their windows. I'm not going to tell them they can't. It's hot in the building, it's cold in the building. That's what happens in buildings like this. You can't get it even all throughout the building. We have different zones, and then we have different employees who have different tolerances of hot and cold. I'm not going to tell them they can't open the window if
It
they're
would
hot.
be cheaper to run the building cold and buy people sweaters than to open the windows every day during January.
They're not open every day, but thank you all. It's duly noted.
With that said,
Motion to adjourn.
I want to thank everybody. For those who are still
in favor?
watching at home, why?
Aye.
Good night, everyone.